Hello everybody, this is Sophie from The Makers. I thank you for joining us on this needle felted leaves, wrong side, live stream. We've got lots and lots of pretty leaves to show you for this live stream as we go into autumn. I'm going to show you some techniques with water soluble paper. So if you haven't used it before, this stuff is absolutely magic. You work into it and then dissolve your leaves. Dissolve the paper at the end and you're just left with your amazing leaf, and you can shape it a little bit as it dries. I'm going to show you some techniques with different tools, the carding brushes for mixing, and generally have a good time. So just while you're getting all your bits together, you'll need pencil, water soluble paper and scissors, as well as your wool needles and mat. While you get those bits together, I'm just going to check in with the live chat. Just say a quick hello to everybody. Oh my goodness. Hello Valley, Faith, Donna, Mo, Jane, Helen, Carol, Fenny, Alicia, and of course Emma, who's here supporting me. If anybody's got any questions, just let Emma know and she can ask them. And Bridget as well. So hello to everybody, and I'll check back in with you later. So if you haven't used this paper before, you can get a lot of different water soluble papers. We've had everything from really super thin that just dissolves as you touch it, to something so thick that you can actually break the needle as you push it in. So the stuff that we sell, we only sell one type, and it's the best that we've found for this project. So we sell it in a metre, or you can get a smaller piece if you prefer, but a metre will make you a whole autumn's worth of leaves, so you'll enjoy that. So the techniques that I'm going to show you are the same techniques that are used in our peacock butterfly kit. So we do have a few of these left from our summer range if anybody wants one of those, and it makes 2 butterflies. Again, they're worked into that water soluble paper, so it's really good for making things which are really thin. So something like a butterfly's wing, a leaf, or these poppies, which I'll be doing a live stream for on Thursday at 3 o'clock if anybody's there. So the water soluble paper acts as a base. It means that you don't have to use as much wool when you're working. So if you were just making a leaf just from wool alone, you might have to make it quite thick so that you can actually felt the layers together. But using the paper, you can actually be quite thin, and especially if you wanted to make a flower, you can actually be really delicate with it, or using hardly any wool at all. And when you dissolve the paper away, it leaves a slight residue in the leaf. So once you've dipped it in water and it dissolves, then it's quite wet, and it's also a little bit sticky because it's got PVA in it, and that helps to, as it dries, you can just shape the leaf a little bit. So if you wanted a little bit of a curled leaf shape, like this has got a slightly crinkly edge, like a dried up leaf, then you can do that while it dries. And that it's that glue in the fibre that means that you can make it really thin, because it just adds a little bit extra strength to your leaf. So things that you will need to make these leaves. So we've got first of all our water soluble paper. If you cut yourself a sort of more workable piece off this paper, I always used to go for the whole, be working on the whole metre at the start, which is gets everywhere. So just cut off what you need, and then if you want to, you can use a template if you find a template of a leaf, or you can just use a leaf itself. So you can just lay that on the water soluble paper and trace around the edges of the leaf. But if you're using a template, the great thing about this water soluble paper is that it's see-through, so you can trace your template through there. So I'm just going to do that. So if you're making, it doesn't matter so much with the leaves because they tend to be a slightly darker colours, so doesn't matter if you use a pen or whatever you want to use. But if you were making, say, a white flower, you might want to use either a pencil or a light coloured pencil crayon, something like that, just to make sure that you don't get that pen going into the edges of your leaf. Otherwise it's like outlined in black. But as I say, it's fine for the leaves. It's just if you're making a lighter coloured item, so something like that light blue, you might want to use a lighter coloured pen. So you've got your water soluble paper with your template drawn on it, and the next thing to do is to choose some wool. So we've got plenty of wool here, so I'm just going to hold some of these up. And what I really like for these leaves, because often in autumn it can be quite wet, a little bit like today. We've got Storm Francis blowing through today. So if you want to create that slightly wet look, you can use our shimmer wools. So here we've got the green shimmer and the yellow shimmer. And they have these synthetic fibres in them which just catch the light a little bit, look a little bit like dew or raindrops. So they're really nice to use. So you can take some bits of your wool. If we just go to here, I've got all sorts of autumnal colours, but don't feel like you've got to stick to the autumn colours. You can go for something a little bit different if you want. But reds, oranges, greens, you can use tops if you want to mix some of those in. A really nice wool is this Dragon. It's a multicoloured bat. This is how it comes, but it comes different every time. So sometimes it's more green, sometimes it's more purple. You never know quite what you're going to get. And you can pick out, you see you've got more pink here, so if you wanted a pinker leaf, you can pick out those colours. Or underneath there you've got a lot more orange and yellow, so you can pick those colours out of that Dragon wool. So it's quite a nice multi-purpose wool. If you're making needle felted pictures, that's a really lovely one, because you've got lots and lots of different tones in there that you can mix in with your wool. So I'm just going to take a bit of these wools, and then you can mix these by hand. If you're mixing by hand, you just take a pinch of each colour and you're teasing them apart and trying to keep the fibres really nice and straight and smooth as you mix, and you start to get these lovely multicoloured stripes like that. So they work really well to describe the sort of veins on the leaf. So leaves have these lovely veins which run up the middle, and then from the middle they run out to the sides. You can see this one's got some of our lovely slap it on sparkles on there as well, which are really nice for these leaves if you want that dewy effect. So if you want to use those lines in your mixed wool to describe the leaves, you can lay them so they sort of run along the centre and going out to the outsides of your leaf. So you're laying them on, and if you imagine the veins going down the centre there and then going to the outside, you can lay them on like that. So those stripes are really useful. Another thing you can do with your wool is to mix it with carding brushes if you have them at home. These are a really nice, they're our small carding brushes and they fit in a toolbox really well. We also sell a slightly larger size, which is good if you're making lots of big things. You can mix a lot more colour at once with the larger ones. I'm going to mix in a little bit of, this is our Sunset Roving. It's really nice for autumn colours. It's got oranges and greens. Nope, not greens, oranges and reds. I'm looking at the green underneath. So I'm just going to take a few of those fibres, and I'm going to take all of those and pop them onto the carding brush. So I'm pinching them just gently. If you hold them too hard, they won't come off, but if you just hold them gently, and you're sort of holding them between your fingers and your the side of your thumb, pulling them gently off, letting them sit onto the carder. You can see that carder's filling up with all those different colours, and I'm trying to move the colours from one side to the other as I put them on, so they don't all end up in one place. And then you can do this with one brush, but you would hold the wool like that and then drag the brush through it on the table. But I'm going to do it with two brushes. So I've got my two brushes, the handles face opposite ways, and then you're just pulling one through the other. It's much easier on these smaller brushes. If anybody's a spinner, you might have those giant carding brushes at home. I've got a set, they're brilliant for making giant butterflies and things like that. But these little ones are perfect for if you're just making little leaves. So there's the mixed colour, and again you can see these slight stripes in there. I'm just going to take that off. The way to take it off the carders is to, if you don't know if you can see that close up, but the carding brushes have these pins which are angled. So if you try and pull it off this way, it's really hard. But if you pull it off the way that the pins are angled, it's much easier. So I've got my mixed colours, and I'm just going to lay those onto the leaf. So if you use your single needle just to get those fibres in place, and at the moment I'm letting the fibres just completely overlap the edges of the template where I've drawn those outlines. And then if you take your needle, just going to swap needles. So I think this is a medium needle, so that this is a bit better for getting in deeper. So I'm just going around the outlines, literally stabbing along those with the needle. You can see it's just pinned those fibres in place. And as you felt, you see them coming through on the back of the water-soluble paper. So you can see where I've really stabbed along that outline, there's a lot more fibres showing there. So what you're doing as you stab along that outline is tacking those fibres in place. And then you just want to fold the edges back on themselves. So you've got that fluffy edge there, and then you fold the edge back on itself to make a nice neat edge. So I'll just show you that close up as well. So there's your fluffy edge with your outline that you stabbed on, and then you're folding those fibres over, making a really nice crisp edge, and just stab those into place. So same on the other side, working along the outline first of all, and then folding those fibres back on themselves to make that nice crisp edge. So when you're using your single needle, those little notches on the needle, they're catching the fibres and pushing them through, and you've got a really small working area because you've just got that one point. So you could make your whole leaf just with a single needle, or you could use a multi-needle tool to really speed things up. So what the multi-needle tool has is 7 needles, and as you can see it's got a much bigger working area, so it's about a centimetre across. What that means is it's not so good for the details, so I'm going to put the details on and do the outlines with my single needle first of all, and then I'm going to move on to a multi-needle tool to really speed the process up. It goes 7 times as fast as you can. So just laying those colours on. Remember, you're keeping those lines really following the same way as the veins, stabbing around those outlines and then folding the fibres back over. And while you're stabbing away, you can have a little think of what you might want to make with your leaves. So you could turn them into a autumn garland. So you could create a few leaves and then string them all up next to each other to make sort of leaf bunting. I've done that with real leaves before as well, but that looks really lovely, just sort of blowing in the wind inside your house. They also make really nice table decorations. So you could have a candle in the middle and then all your leaves around the outside, and you could use real acorns and fill the acorn cups with wool balls, multicoloured wool balls. I think there might be some in this book. So this is Steffi's book, Making Simple Needle Felts, and you can see on the front there you've got an acorn cup and then it's filled with a wool ball inside, and they look beautiful all in different colours. And again, you could string them up as part of your garland. So these leaves are a nice satisfying project to make. If you've got children at home, they can help you by gathering leaves for you to draw templates around. While you do the stabby bit. We say that all of our kits are suitable for age 10 and up, but if you've got children younger than that, they can needle felt, but it's really up to your discretion. So if you know that they're fine with scissors and needles and those sorts of things, then you can have them needle felting alongside you, but just watch them and make sure that you're happy that they're safe with the needle, obviously. So just filling in all those bits. When you're using the water-soluble paper, you are stabbing straight into your mat, so things do tend to want to attach themselves. So before you go too crazy with it, you do have to gently peel them off the mat. So just carefully like that. Sometimes you get a hole in your water-soluble paper when you do that, but don't worry. It's absolutely fine. You can just stab some more wool over it. The great thing about needle felting. And just if you hold it up to the light, I don't know if you'll be able to see this through there, but if you were to hold it up to a light source, you can see that where there's thin patches. So I do have a little bit of a thin patch just here. You might be able to see things passing under it slightly more clearly there. So I'm just going to fill in that thin patch. And then the final step with this leaf, make sure that you've got a little stalk. So the stalk is part of the leaf as well. You can take a little pinch of wool, just twist it between your fingers, and then you can just make sure you've got some fluffy ends to kind of attach to that leaf. And there's your little stem for your leaf. So I've done all the sort of outlines with my single needle, and then if you have one of these, it's great. If you don't have one, you can just carry on with your single needle and get that surface really well fixed down. All those loose fluffy fibres you can see coming off the surface, they all need to be fixed down. And then, come on. And then you can use your 7 needle tool, so those 7 super fast speedy needles. You can use it with a brush mat. It's always best to use it with a brush mat because the brush mat provides a really solid surface to felt into. So when you push the needles in, they can go in there and they can move all around and they'll never break. If you're using a foam mat or an earth mat and you did that, you're quite likely to break the needles. So brush mat's really, really good. And they do last forever and ever. As you can see, this mat's getting full of fluff. So pop your leaf onto the brush mat and then start hammering away with your 7 needle tool. If you've had a bad day, these are absolutely brilliant for getting all those frustrations out. So really fixing that surface down. Like that. And you should be able to see all these little holes where the needle's been. I've really fixed those surface fibres down. So that's ready to add some details in a bit. So I'll just let you catch up. We'll go over to the live chat. Try and catch up with where I left off. Oh, Valley, hi Sophie, you look lovely, thank you. Oh, that makes me feel better. Valley also says, I feel like a dried up leaf. I think we're all feeling a bit like that at the moment after the kind of year that we've had. I hope you're okay, Valley. Maybe have a bath. Get yourself a bit damper. June, you're meant to be working. Tut, 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 tut. We're glad you're here with us. And Bridget loves the dragon wool bats. Yeah, that's those multicoloured bats. Where are they? There. Those lovely multicoloured bats. Just there they are. Faith, I hardly use roving anymore. Can you use carding brushes with batting too? You can use carding brushes with any fibres, even if you have curls, you can use them with that because you're essentially combing out the curls. You can use them with wool bats. You can use them to mix the bats and tops together, which is what I did for that leaf. Or you can use them just for tops. So if you were using, here's some carded sari silk and some of that sunset roving. So you can card those together with the bats, with the carding brushes as well. So I've got 2 types of tops there. And just carding them together, and you get quite a smooth effect with the carding brushes, much smoother than if you were mixing it by hand. So there's the sort of effect you get. And that carded sari silk has a lovely kind of shine in there. I think I've got a stray Angelina fibre as well, just saw that glinting. But it does get everywhere. Yes, I have. So you can use them for tops or bats or roving. Or curls, sorry, not roving. Ah, Pamela, good morning. Thanks for joining us. I know it's very early for you. And Bridget from Melbourne. Hello, Bridget. It must be, is it earlier for you or later for you? I know Alicia had someone at 4 in the morning. Maybe it was you. Alicia's been doing these live Zoom sessions, so you can all create your subscription boxes together. Faith says, this is fun. I'm using the wool I got from the Jungle Surprise sub box this month. Oh, perfect colours, isn't it? Brilliant. And Laura says, my poor brush mat has hardly been used since I got the earth mat. Well, the earth mats are absolutely brilliant, so that's absolutely fine if you prefer that. And Alicia, yes, I placed my brush mat on my earth mat so it's not banging on the table. When you're late night felting and don't want to disturb anybody, it's the ideal thing. And Laura says my next purchase is definitely the multi-tool with the single needle tool. Yes, definitely go for it. If you this multi-tool is much better for flat or 2D work, so like the leaves that we're making, because it's got this finger guard on it that just slips back as you push the needles in. That finger guard helps to hold everything flat as you work. But what it also tends to do, or I find, I know some people use them for 3D, but what I find is that that finger guard wants to squash your, if you're making a 3D robin or something, it wants to squash your robin flat as well. So if you were to use a multi-tool for 3D work, something like the 8 needle tool, or if you have a prim tool, just looking for one of these. These are much better for 3D work, and you can also get your needles to sink in a lot. You can see that the needles sink in a lot further, whereas you're quite restricted on the 7 needle tool. It's only got a short little distance there to get into your make. So if you're trying to create a round ball like that, those needles are only going to slightly go in, whereas these ones could go right the way through to the middle. Also with these tools you can take out some of the needles, so if you're working and it's not going in very far, you can take out say 3 or 4 of the needles to turn it into a 4 needle tool, and then you'll find that it goes in a lot further. So I'm just going to show you the next bits of the leaf. So when you've got your basic leaf shape done and filled in, you can add extra bits to it. You could add some of these bits at the start as well if you wanted to have them already in your wool as you mix it, but you can use something like carded sari silk, which is a lovely shiny, just adds this lovely richness to the wool as you work. That's the red and this one is the yellow. So the yellow sometimes has like darker fibres running through it as well, so that's quite nice for the leaves. The other wools that you might like to use for the leaves are the variegated wools, so they have darker tones running through them already. So if you just want to use one wool and it's ready-made, then those are quite nice wools to use if you want to get a lot of leaves done quickly. So that's got that variegated green in with a little bit of dragon at the tips, which is quite nice. So if you're mixing those in, again, you can do it by hand or with your carding brushes. And I'm just going to mix a nice kind of very faint yellowy colour with a bit of sari silk and a bit of wool. You always need a little bit of wool with this sari silk because it's quite a dense fibre by itself, so it's quite tough, and if you just try and put that on the top of your wool and then felt it in, you're going to break your needles because it's so dense. So to break it up a little bit, we mix it with a bit of pinch of wool. And the other thing I'm going to mix in is some of this lovely Angelina fibre. If you've never used it before, it comes with a warning, which is Angelina fibre is for life, not just for Christmas. It gets everywhere, absolutely everywhere. You'll be covered in it. As you saw, it's already in all of this wool. It's best if you keep it in its own separate container or well away from anything that you don't want to be sparkly forever. So I'm just mixing those Angelina fibres and some of the sari silk fibres as well. I'm just going to take that and make a little thin layer over the top of my leaf. So I'm just gonna remember when you're mixing to lay things flat. So you're teasing the fibres apart and laying them flat again on top. Imagine you're making like lasagna and you want like all the layers to be flat on top, so you tease them apart, lay them flat on top. If you tease them apart and then just bunch them into each other again, you'll end up with these kind of like knots in your wool. So you get a much more, I don't know if you can see that very well, but you get a much more sort of bobbly, rough kind of mix. If you mix them and keep the fibres straight, sometimes you might want this kind of more messy mix, like if you wanted to make, if you were making a whole tree and you wanted it to look like there's loads of leaves and they're all sort of going everywhere, that would be a good technique to use. But if you keep the fibres nice and flat and straight, you get these lovely smooth mixes, and it's great for the leaves because you can just lay them on. So again, just kind of working with those veins. And I'm just gonna, because this isn't a sort of very detailed part, I'm just gonna go straight in there with my 7 needle tool. And get all those fibres fixed down. So because I've mixed the wool with the sari silk and the Angelina fibre, those wool fibres are just helping the Angelina fibres to stay in place. I can't guarantee they'll all stay in place. You might end up with a few on you. So just fixing all those fibres in. That. And the other little details we can put on these leaves are the veins that I showed you earlier. So the veins, you can use a slightly different colour that you've used from the rest of your leaf to help them stand out, or you could choose to use something a bit more similar so they're a bit more part of the leaf. So on here they're quite subtle, and on this one they stand out quite a lot. So that's that lovely kind of purple colour over the orange and green, which looks really nice. So I think I'm going to go maybe use a bit of the sunset tops actually. So if you're using tops, you've already got this kind of long strand that you can just pull off. So all the strands are together going that way, and you can just pull from the side of that a nice long strand. And if you were using bats, you can do something similar, but you sometimes have to straighten out the fibres a bit. So I'm just pulling off a bit of the wool, and then I'm just going to tease them out. So it's almost like I'm trying to pull a piece off, but I'm just stopping before it comes off. So just teasing a little bit out. And if you're making these at home, you can get quite obsessive over these bits, adding these lovely little details on top. So you can tease that wool out, and if you were to lay that on as it is, it's quite a sort of wide line. But if you want that to be a thinner line, you can either roll it between your thumb and finger like that, or if you've got a big piece like I have, just go between the palms of your hands. And you get a much neater line, so you can pre-shape it a little bit before you put it on. So I'm going to use my sunset for the middle bit, and then I'll use the bats, the slightly shorter fibres, for the outer veins, I think. So again, I might just roll those tops between my fingers and just pull off what I don't need. You can put that to one side because you can always use that on the next part. And then again, you're going back to your single needle, so you've got that for details. And if you just start at one end of the leaf, and start attaching those fibres on, you can use one hand to hold the vein in the direction you want it to go. So this is the centre vein, so I want it to go right to the edge of the leaf. And so I'm just pinning it down and stopping all those fibres from shrinking too far backwards as I felt. So there's a little trick when you get to the ends of the wool. So here, I'll just hold that up. You can probably see I've got these little wispy ends. If you have those but you don't want to felt them down, just let your needle catch them by swirling your needle around them. Just going to get that focused again. Come on. Swirl the needle around it. Like that. Can you see all those fibres tangling up? And then push them in. And you see that's got rid of all those loose fluffy fibres. So again, while you're doing these veins, you have to just remember to peel those leaves off your mat every now and again. And then I was going to use those bats for the outside. So because the bats are slightly shorter fibres than the tops, they can be easier in smaller places. But if you wanted to do this part with the tops, you can just break the fibres. So I've literally broken off a smaller piece like that. So I could just lay that on, felt it into place. Or you can do it with the bats, so just pulling little bits off and felting them into place. So a few years ago I used to teach two lovely little girls to do crafts. We did needle felting and sewing and painting and mosaics and all sorts, and crochet. And one of the projects that we did was a leaf frame. So it's a box frame about 50 centimeters wide and 50 centimeters high. And we went on a walk and sort of foraged all different kinds of leaves. I think we tried to find 9 different leaves so we could have 9 going across in the box. And then took them home and traced all the outlines onto the water-soluble paper and filled them in. They were copying the colours from the leaves as well. And then we dissolved them all with the water and left them to dry, and then the next week we put them all in the frame and they wrote the names of each type of leaf underneath. Sort of educational needle felting. It was a really nice project. So I'm just doing those veins coming outwards from the centre. With those same children we actually made 3 of those box frames in the end. So one had the leaves, one had the flowers, and one had the butterflies. So it was a really lovely triptych on their wall. So there we go, got all the veins on the leaves. I'm going to lay that onto my brush mat again, and this time I'm going to use a 3-needle tool. So we sell 2 different designs of these. One is made by Clover and one is made by well, it's just this one, the blue one. And the main difference with them is with the Clover one you can take the end off so that you can get the needles further in, as well as it being Clover brand. But these are just fine as well. So I'm just using the 3-needle tool because it's a bit more good for the small details that I've just done. So just fixing those in place a little bit more before I use the 7-needle tool. Then you can really go for it, fix them down. Good fun, those tools. So I've got my leaf. If you look on the back, you should see now loads and loads of those fibres coming through. If there's any patches like here where it's a bit more bare, you can just go over those sections again with your tool. And you see it fills in a lot more of those fibres. And this leaf I would say is ready to cut out now. So you can refine the edges a little bit more. You can do it before you cut it out, or you can do it after you cut it out. So actually it might be easier to show you before I cut it out. So if you've got bits of the leaf where it kind of sinks in and you've lost that shape a little bit, you can take your needle and instead of going straight into the fibres, you can use it on a much lower angle, so you're almost going from the side of the fibres. You can push those in. This is especially good if you're making holly leaves or something like that, because you can use this technique to go on the insides of the curves of those holly leaves where they're spiky. You can use the needle pushing the fibres in on the inside of the curve, and then where it goes out again for that spike, you can use your needle in the same technique but just pushing the fibres outwards slightly. So I'll try and make this into a spike. And you see you get a really nice line there. You can get a really spiky spike. So if you want to sort of finalize your design a bit more, it's a great way to do it. I'm going to get rid of that spike by pushing them back in again, because this is an oak leaf, not a holly leaf. And then I'm going to cut out. So you see here it's just torn a little bit on the paper, a little hole there. Don't worry if that happens. You're going to cut the paper out and soak it all away anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to cut this out. You're cutting away the excess of the paper, because if you don't do that, like I did once, and then you try and soak the paper away, you end up with a great big gooey lump, which is never good. It's never good for a leaf. You want a nice leaf. So cutting out around there. You can go sort of close to the wool, but you don't have to be really perfect around the edges. Just leave a millimetre or a couple of millimetres. So I'm gonna cut these out. These are great projects. We often do these as like a workshop at show, either leaves or flowers or butterflies, and people, we usually let them make it on the water soluble paper at the show, but dissolve it at home, because you don't really want to be carrying around a kind of wet sticky lump with you all day. So we let them soak it away at home, but often people are scared to soak the paper away. So sometimes people feel like once you soak the paper away, then the whole leaf's going to dissolve, but it really won't. The only time it might do that is if you were making, say, a flower and you make each petal completely separately of the next one. So you've got one petal here and one petal here, and they're butted up against each other with no wool joining them in the middle. So if you do that, if you had 5 separate petals, say, then when you dissolve that paper away, it will completely turn into 5 petals. But as long as you've got wool linking across the petals, it won't fall apart. It'll be fine. So here we've got the leaf, and I have a glass of water. I'll just change it to the overhead view. So if you use really, really cold water, it sometimes takes a bit longer to dissolve. So this actually is quite cold now, so it might take a little while to dissolve, but it's within seconds anyway. If you use hot water, it's gone straight away. So I'm just dipping it in the water there, and already I can see that the paper has dissolved off the back. So I'm going to squeeze out most of the excess water, and you can be quite, I'll show you how rough you can be. You can just scrumple the whole thing up, squeeze it out like that, and then you can see how scrumpled it is, and then you can just open it out and it's fine. And it's actually quite nice to scrumple those leaves up. So if you rinse it and rinse it and rinse it, you will rinse out all of that PVA glue. But if you just dip it in and squeeze it out like I did, then you'll end up with quite a lot of the glue left in there. And because I've scrumpled it up, you've got a nice kind of texture there. And if you leave it to dry like that, it will keep that shape. If you were to turn that into a brooch and sort of wear it for a long time, it might start to lose that shape, but you can always mix a bit of water and PVA and sort of repeat that process if you want to keep it like that. So put it on a paper towel, put it somewhere warm to dry on top of a radiator or wherever you like. and it will dry in that position. If you find that the edges have gone a little bit blurry, again after you've done that, you can just snip those edges so they become sort of more solid again. So that's fine. I'm just going to dry my hands because they're all sticky now. Just get everywhere. And the other thing you can do, I used to make a lot of the butterflies. So if you were making a butterfly, you can actually dry it over the corner of something, like the corner of a radiator or a shelf or something like that. Sit it to dry like that, and then when it dries you'll have this lovely butterfly just about to take off, which is really nice. And you can put a little bit, if you've got laundry starch, you can put a little bit of laundry starch into the water. You have to experiment with the amounts on something that you don't mind if it gets ruined, because I put too much starch in once and it can get quite gooey. So there's your leaf, finished leaf. And if you want to add more finishing touches, there's always more to come. So you can use a slap it on, which is a fabric. It's not glitter glue, it's actually permanent. So be careful what you get it on. There's some chemical process which happens to the fibers when this stuff dries, that basically makes it like a permanent bond. So you can use it to add a kind of glittery effect to your clothes or whatever, and you could wash them and it would stay permanently bonded. But with the leaves, we just add a bit on. It gets all goopy like that, but like glue, it does dry clear, so don't worry. And then when it dries, you end up with these lovely sparkles. So they look really lovely, like kind of dew or rain or just sparkles. Everybody needs a bit of sparkle. So that can just be put to one side to dry. And the other thing we've got, I'm sure some of you have seen these before and you know how much I love them, are our Sew Brooch Backs. So Sew Brooch Backs. They look like a safety pin. Everybody says, oh, they always laugh because they think it's just a safety pin. But if you look closer, it doesn't have that little ring. And that means that you can slide it in. Go on the other. So there's your little pin. You can slide that pin in and then just keep going all the way around like that. And you can't do that with a safety pin. You need one of these Sew Brooch Backs. And then you've got an instant brooch back. Yay! I used to spend hours and hours and hours sewing on brooch backs. So imagine how much of your life you're going to get back with these Sew Brooch Backs. They're absolutely amazing. And especially if you run workshops, or if you are part of like a community craft group. We've helped people make these poppies before, and we've donated like 200 of these Sew Brooch Backs to a group which was desperately advertising for volunteers to come and help sew on brooch backs, and we said, you don't need to, you can just use our Sew Brooch Backs. They're brilliant. So there's your leaves. That is how you make them. You've used water soluble paper. That lovely water soluble paper is a great base to make your leaves as thin as you like. If you're making them as a brooch, you can make them a little bit thicker to make them a bit more sturdy if you're going to be wearing them every day. And you can use all our luxury fibres, carded sari silks, you can use Angelina fibres, or whatever you fancy mixing in. You can use tops, you can use bats. Anything goes with these leaves, so just have loads of fun and turn them into some lovely big project at the end. Show off your leaves. If you've enjoyed making the leaves, we have the butterfly kits, which uses similar technique. We've got a poppy stab along coming up on Thursday at 3 o'clock. That will be available on YouTube afterwards as well. We do the kits, and if you're feeling autumnal and you want to make pumpkins, we do a pumpkin pack, and we do have a live stream that we did a few weeks ago for pumpkins, so you can learn how to do them easily as well. And if you fancy a bit of a challenge, we've got our squirrel kits. So these are wire armature inside. They're completely new technique, different to what we were doing here, and they have a fun technique for the fluffy tail as well. So you can enjoy those. And thank you for watching, everybody, and you can share your pictures of your leaves on our Facebook group, Everyone a Maker. On Instagram we're at The Makers, and Twitter we're at The Makers as well. So come and share your makes, we love to see them. And thank you for watching. And I'm just going to check in with the live chat again before I go. Oh my god, goodness, it's always hard to find where I should start. I just want to say thanks to everyone who's on the live chat as well, because it's nice to know that people are watching. And Alicia's saying about her Zoom workshops, be advertising them soon for next month. So the subs box ones, people have been making the projects from the subs boxes, and then if you get our surprise box, it's just materials and no instructions, and if you want some ideas of what to make with it, Alicia's been giving people ideas too. So I know there's limited places on those Zoom workshops, and I know people have really been enjoying them, so I'm sure Alicia will be posting more details about that soon. And hello, Erica. Bridget says it's kind of hypnotic watching Sophie film. Well, as I'm letting you fall asleep, that's good. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Thanks, Alicia. And Valley says you can keep some shorthand sewing needles in the secret compartment in the Clover tool. Yes, it does have a secret compartment, which we were very confused as to what you meant to keep in there, but of course sewing needles would fit. And Fenny says, if you dry it on top of a cup, will it stay that shape like a little nest? Exactly. If you're making a flower, like a poppy or something like that, a cup or an egg cup's quite good. If you put, obviously tip the water out first, but if you put a bit of kitchen roll or a paper towel or something in there first, and then sit your poppy in there, it dries really quick, and it will have that lovely kind of cupped shape. So that's a really nice tip. And if you've got something quite small, you can use an egg cup as well. Bridget says thanks. Faith says I've got the squirrels on my birthday list. You're in for a treat, Faith. I can't wait to see your squirrels. Mo says thank you. And Karen, oh hello Karen, I didn't say hello to you. Thanks, so if you managed to make a leaf without the paper, but we'll order some to come with my next subs box. Oh, well done, Karen, and yeah, enjoy your surprise in your next sub box then. Well, not so much of a surprise, but and thanks everybody for watching and taking part, and looking forward to seeing you again on Thursday if you can make it. We have got a slight change to our schedule in September, and we'll be bringing out more details of that as they come. So thanks everybody for watching. See you Thursday. Bye bye.